Last year during the US Open, like John Wertheim posted some tweet where he said something along the lines of the USTA needs to pick and choose, needs to pick a side. Like they can't say that we are responsible for player development and building champions, and then also take credit when they had Fritz, Tiafo, Pegula, and I'm not sure who else, maybe Coco were deep in the US Open. So, in your opinion, based on your experience with the USTA, do you think that player development is over or underrated?
Huh. Wow. That's a hot topic right there.
You know what's funny about this? This man told me not to tell him what the overrated, underrated was before because he wants to see the reaction when we tell him.
Yeah, I like it. I like it. I do. This is what people want to see. I don't want a scripted answer. You want to feel it. I mean, for me, I think I mean, you can almost say both. I mean, right now,
you're retired now. Give me the truth. Give me the real.
Come on, just let it
No, I critique them. Right now, I would say that it's overrated. It's overrated right now. I don't think it's at its peak, what it's doing. I think there's too many moving parts. I think what happened with kind of budgets and after COVID and what happened with the actual tournament itself, you know, who's in the positions, getting the players to Orlando. Like it's not ideal right now. I think there are a lot of good pieces in player development, but as a whole, I think the philosophies have like changed too much. I don't feel like they get free reign completely to do whatever they want. And at the same time,
the coaches?
Kind of, yeah. I mean, at times, but I think because sometimes it's just like it's a system. But you know, the next part, I do feel like there's a huge opportunity of like guys like myself, you know, guys that had good careers that stopped, Americans that want to help. And, you know, if they can give us opportunities, you know, maybe we can create something and really, you know, make player development underrated. Just with the experience, I think there's a lot of good coaches out there, but nobody really wants to travel. Nobody wants to do what it takes, you know, and I get it. You know, people have families, they just get burnt out. They don't want to be on the road 35 weeks, but my brutal opinion is if you want to be a coach on tour and do all this stuff, like that's what it entails. You know, like I'm not a big believer in these like 15-week coaches and all that stuff. I'm like, what are you doing 15 weeks? Like, give me a break, you know? So like commit or don't. You know, you can work with somebody, you can do that. Like, okay, maybe you have this culture of everyone has like 2-3 coaches, you're on the same page. It's very, very difficult. Someone really has to be on the same page. There has to be no egos involved. Once there's a little bit of an ego, that's going to crumble. But yeah, I think just the way player development can really succeed and be the best thing ever. Just some changes, but at the same time, the higher ups are the ones that are controlling kind of the resources they get. So I don't feel like they're at max potential with even being a slam, but I criticize every single slam. I think it's so interesting. Like they're like the countries that are just, you know, oh, this is so wrong, this is that. I mean, you're always going to have haters or critique, but it can be done smooth and easy. But the politics get involved. You can only do so much. So I think that's where my reasoning for overrated is. If you could get rid of the politics, which I don't know how, then it would be a different story. But at the same time, would it be player development if it goes that way? I don't know.
Like money wise, what would you do differently? Like, would you? Because it seems that they've taken some money out of the challenges, out of the futures. They've have had less tournaments, which in my opinion,
well, I guess that's another part. Great. You have the tournaments. Like, how are we? Like, I say it to the Aussies all the time because they have the worst schedule ever. I'm like, how? I think the Australian Open gets help from the government, so they get to run the tournament. I could be wrong, but I think they get help from the government.
I love that. And slide that one in there. Just sneak that one in there.
Yeah, of course. I got to protect myself.
Okay.
Yeah. I'm in the country.
But here it goes
anyway. They get all this money, right? And same thing with like Wimbledon, but it's a little bit different story of Wimbledon. But Australia, I'm like, how do you guys not have 20 challengers, 20 hundreds? You can literally shove 10 guys into the top 100. You guys complain about we don't have this, we need a Grand Slam champion, all this stuff, blah, blah, blah. Guys don't work hard, coaches don't do this, blah, blah, blah. Like you can shove guys in there with tournaments. It's the same thing in the States. Like, we just have a bunch of 75s, and I've mentioned a bunch in private where I'm like, how are you going to, okay, max, you can get like 4 guys in there. And that has to be the same 4 guys winning every single week, making the semis. And that's so hard to do on top of other results. Like you put a bunch of hundreds and 125s, you're just shoving guys in there, shoving guys on the top 100. It becomes a numbers game. And then if you have a numbers game, like, of course, they're going to start pushing each other. Hopefully you create a culture where they want to train together. That goes back into player development. You're like, hey guys, let's all get into like the USTA, like do all this stuff. We'll get the help, like create a unbelievable training environment. And then that's how you're going to get guys that just start to shine. You get 20 to 30. Like, if you can do it, I can do it. And then I think that's kind of what happened with this whole young group of just Tommy, Francis, Riley, Fritz. Like it's insane. So, and look what they're doing right now. Like,
bro, even the group coming in after them, they're all in Boca. Like all of the guys who are really good in college, coming out to college, they're all doing that, like training together down in Boca.
Yeah, I mean, Boca is definitely the hot spot right now. South Florida is huge. I mean, Orlando, like I've used Orlando a lot my last like 2 years living closer there. But it's the city is tough. It's tough.
I was going to ask that, like how much of a problem is it for the pros that it's
it's a certain personality. It's a certain personality that's going to thrive there. The resources itself are great. The facilities are great. The courts are good. The gym is sick. You got good coaches. You got good fitness as much as you want. You got the programs. Hit whenever you want. Balls. That's super underrated. And then all of a sudden, you grind and then you go home and you're like, what is this place? I think you need to be a robot. I think it appeals to the robot. I think 10 years from now, when that place gets like more developed and there's a little bit more of a culture there, it's a lot better. I think if you're like more downtown Orlando, like Winter Park area, that's kind of like the hot spot, the fun place to live, but it's 35, 40 minutes away. How many people want to do that? Crazy expensive. And then that's also, you got to be careful. Like if you're a guy that, gets enticed to like want to go out and do stuff, like, is that the spot you want to live? You have to know yourself and be honest, or how bad do you want your career to not having that? So I think that's where it's tough. Driving those roads into Nona isn't like, wow, this is amazing. Like there's cows to the left, you got palm trees, and like you could tell it was built like 8 years ago, 7 years ago. So I think that's what's tough. But if you're like, I don't know, you're in a cool, okay, let's say Charleston, right? You go to that club. I don't know if you ever played that tournament or not.
I heard it's a joke.
It's so nice. It's insane. I was like, yeah, I train all day here. Like, this is sick. I don't want to leave the site. I want to hang out. Yeah. So I think there's a little bit of that matters, especially with how draining the tour is and how much you travel. Like, you really want to love home. You want to make your space your own and like really want to be there. Like, if you don't even like where you train and then you get sick of hotels and stuff, like, where's your reset?
Do they have food there at Lake Nona, like on
they
site?
do. They set it up. They set it up at times. It's not always there, but they do set it up at times. Yeah.
Because I was talking to. I have a cousin that plays professional soccer. He's in like one of the, not the MLS, but like a league below the MLS. But I trained with him like twice this week, and I was just talking to him about his routine, like when he's at his club. I guess the question I asked him was like, yo, do you play video games? He's like, no, I don't really have time. And I was like, what do you mean you don't have time? He's like, yeah, like I get to the club for 8, I eat breakfast. And then I guess he didn't go into specifics, but he's like, yeah, training, fitness, physio, whatever he has to do. Then he eats lunch and he does all of that in his time. And then he leaves at 4. So at the end of the day is when he goes home at 4 and then he has to prepare his dinner. And I guess then he wants to spend time talking to his family and stuff. And then it's time to go to sleep, do it all over again. And I personally don't have that, but I feel like USTA, the way they set up, everything's in house. Like they have that where you can arrive for training, do everything you want to do in the day, and then go home at the end of the day. Like it's a lot more convenient that way. And most tennis players don't have that.
Yeah, I agree. It's definitely more convenient. Like doing a preseason in Orlando is one of the best things you can do right now. A lot of guys come in, the intensity is so high. It's such a competitive environment. So I think that's huge. I think, criticized in the last like probably 5, 6, 7 years where now guys are just like isolating themselves like more and more and more. Like I'm guilty of it too, but the group training spots where like when I first started, it didn't even think twice. So like you went to Boca, you went to Tampa, everyone's there. That's it. And you wouldn't even, you go to Ponte Vedra back in the day, there's always like 10 guys. Now it's like you can't find anywhere that has more than 2 guys. And then if the schedule is a little bit different, then you never hitting with anybody. You're hitting with juniors all the time. Like now I almost say to a lot of guys, like, live near a college, like, is massive. Using like top college players, like, it's huge, but it only takes you so far. Yeah. Yeah, I know. So, the convenience for sure is massive. It's a huge help, but then it has to be done right. Like, again, you can work smart, or, anywhere, but I think just having a lot of players is the key to the most part, and then kind of minimizing, bouncing around from place to place, having some kind of consistency. But we'll see what happens with how the generation's moving.
Thanks so much for watching this clip. The link for the full episode will be down below. Don't forget to like and subscribe so you don't miss any of our upcoming episodes.